Welcome back to 8 Cubes. We have our usual co-host Lambie Series back with us, and we are here to start conversation on Doom 2099, who will be dropping in about 24 hours from when this episode was uploaded. Now, Doom 2099 is a card that I have been very afraid of for a while now, because one of the major things that people ask me, one of the major value propositions that I can bring to people is this card worth buying? And I think a card that has a chance to be context defining, like Doom 2099, can, in retrospect, change whether or not a card was a good decision to buy in the past. And so when people have been asking me about Peni Parker, when people have been asking me about Galacta, they're all good now, but Doom 2099, a 4-2 that says when you end a turn playing only one card, you create a Doombot 2099, which is also a 4-2 with an ongoing ability that gives +1 to your other Doombots and Dooms. This is a card that creates a lot of spread power on the board. This is a card that goes very strictly in certain types of 4, 5, 6 mid-range decks. This is a card that maybe you want to ramp out with Zabu or Psylocke. This is a card that goes very well with current Doctor Doom. And this is a card that changes the context of what is valued in a metagame by sheer force. And so this is the card that I'm worried the absolute most about changing what is good right now. And we'll talk a little bit about what is good right now. But first we have to talk about this guy who is, I think Lambie said right before we started recording, a god card.
I mean, he's quite literally a Marvel super villain, right? He's like kind of literally a god as well. But like, okay, honestly, this card has it's gotten me super excited because firstly, this card I would say will warp the meta. I think I've said this before, but it will warp the meta not because it's just gonna be the best thing to do for sure, but because it will just change the way people play the game, like we mentioned. Because what this card does is it incentivizes you to play less things, right? You just want to play one big thing and then another big thing, and then maybe you play Doom on 6, right? Which is the max value you can get out of this is Doctor Doom 2099, which also means that you really, really want to Zabu this guy out because that's just an additional Doom bot, right? If you get it out a turn earlier. It's really a lot of stats. I haven't done the math in my head, but it's a lot. It's like 417,
It is
420 something.
417, and then if you play a Doom, it's giving all of them +3,
Yes.
presumably, so it becomes a 426.
Yeah, so this card makes good decks become a bit more easy mode. Like a good deck revolving around this card should be relatively easy to play because it just has one game plan. Play this early and play one card a turn. Which also, now that I think about it, it makes the going wide strategy very easy and strong. But then again, it's very easy to beat going tall, right? Because
Yes.
it's like you get stats everywhere, which, let's be real, people love playing Doctor Doom because it's safe and gets stats everywhere. But then you beat Doctor Doom by how? Going super tall in two locations, right? So I think beating this is very similar as like beating the old Doctor Doom decks, just that we haven't really figured out, or like since the card is not released yet, we don't exactly know what beats or what goes tall in two lanes as quickly or as well.
Yeah, one of the things that's really sticking with me about the general process of Marvel Snap is there's this thing that keeps happening where, like, a new card will come out, it will be very strong, and people will play a lot of it, and they will win a lot of games. And then the next week, a new card will come out, and it will be very strong, and people will play a lot of it, and they will win a lot of games. And of those cards, maybe one or two stick around long term. Like if you go back to the Symbiote season, you're seeing Scream still, you're seeing Anti-Venom still, you're seeing occasionally some Scorn, but you're not seeing as much Agent Venom anymore. And, that's balance changes, right? But sometimes those cards stick around and sometimes they don't. And so, like, just going back a little bit, we saw a lot of Fenris Wolf, and now we're not seeing nearly as much Fenris Wolf, right? I expect it's possible that happens with Peni Parker. Doom 2099 strikes me as the card where it feels like this guy is going to be around. And what's going to be dependent, what his long-term viability is dependent on is how good people are going to be at beating him. And that's what's going to keep him either around or not around. And in service of that, the card US Agent is obviously terrifying. You're making a bunch of 4-drops, and they're all not very big on their own, and they're spread pretty wide. And so it's like you have this army of 4/5s that all get completely canned by US Agent. There's bounce strategies that are able to go tall in 2 lanes as opposed to specifically going big in 1, or as opposed to going big across all 3. There's just a lot of stuff that feels like it could be good against this deck, but ultimately, the stuff I'm worried about is like, is a Galacta deck gonna have enough points to beat this?
Uh-huh.
Is a Wiccan deck gonna have enough points to beat this? Is a deck that plays Hydro Bob gonna have enough points to beat this? Like, are the traditional mid-range decks gonna are they gonna be able to stand on business against this card? Or are they gonna be forced out by it? And I want to know what you think about that.
Yeah, I want to just throw two more questions in like
Sure.
to the comments, and we don't really have to answer it now as well. But I think it's very interesting questions. I think the first one is basically which deck would probably be able to go tall in 2 locations well enough to beat this. And secondly, I think the more interesting question is if this is the 4, Doctor Doom is the 6. What is the best 5 to play in this deck? Because you clearly want to play one card, right? What is the best 5? Is it like Vision? Is it like Legion? Is it another 5? It's gonna be quite interesting because the 4 and the 6 is kind of spoken for, but the 5, what is the best 5, you
I
know?
think it's Sandman. Sandman sucks, but when I think about beating this deck, I think about playing US Agent and some other stuff on the final turn of the game,
Mm-hmm.
and Sandman makes that just meaningfully harder enough. It's possible that Sandman does nothing in the face of like a Black Swan or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
but I do think that like if you're playing like US Agent plus stuff, you're gonna want to get Sandman into your deck, like, or you're gonna want to get Sandman into your deck to beat the people playing US Agent plus stuff.
True, true.
Next up is Peni Parker in review, and a lot of my angst about Doctor Doom is prompted by this topic, basically, because I love this card. I think she is awesome. I have had a ton of fun with her. I would call her like an 8 out of 10 card. She has so many different hooks. She does so many different things. She's the perfect fit for a Wiccan deck. She's even creating some of her own special synergies in like various Galacta shells where you're using her to get to 5 to play Galacta plus a Kitty Pryde on 4, which is effectively like playing Galacta a turn early. All of that stuff is so cool, so awesome. I really love her. She's very small ball.
Yes.
And that is not always going to be a relevant thing if the meta gets big enough. And so when I talk about Doom 2099 changing the context of cards like this, I worry that Peni Parker is going to be one of those flash in the pan, it's 1 week, and then the next card just like puts her in the dumpster. And that's my biggest worry for Peni Parker in review is it is entirely possible that she just gets massively dumpstered because when you look at what people are doing with her, it's in those mid-range Wiccan shells. Sometimes they're playing like Agony Scarlet Spider. I feel like there's absolutely no justification to be like an Agony Galacta Scarlet Spider deck when you can be a Doom 2099 deck instead and get similar output for a lot less effort. And so a lot of the things that Penny goes with are just going to get like kind of forced out by the existence of Doom 2099. And she doesn't really go with Doom 2099 because she ramps you to 5, and you don't want to go 4+1 with a card that has Doom 2099's text. And so I don't know if this card is going to survive the week, which is tough because she is awesome right now. If we were going to stay in this meta forever, I would say you should buy Peni Parker, but I'm really scared that the small ballness of her is going to force her out.
Yeah, so you hit on 2 points that I just want to emphasize, and I think it's absolutely correct. And I also want to give like my further opinion on it, which is
Sure.
she's definitely very small ball. Like she's very feels good. She lets you ramp up to the things that you want to do. The whole Galacta plus Kitty Pride on the same turn thing is it's actually a very very strong thing to do. One of the things that I really like about the card in itself. But one thing you also mentioned, which is I do think personally that Doom 2099 will push the whole Penny Parker narrative way out because like you said, right, it's Doom 2099 is just doing less things for maybe better profit, you know. It's actually a lot less effort to play Doom 29 and get like that
Yeah.
amount of stats all over the board, you know. But of course it's also less flexible playing a less flexible playing a Doom 2099 deck, right? So yeah, I personally like Penny Parker as a card as well. It opens up so many things, right? Like initially we were just talking about like a perfect Wiccan curve or whatever, but like you mentioned, there's so many different little interactions and with the card that you can have. So sad to say, I do think the Doom 2099 will push her a bit down on the scale for a bit.
Yeah, and that's when we do this stuff in review, normally we're talking about how good they are now, but Doom
Yeah.
2099 looms so large in the future that it's hard for me to recommend someone buy a small ball card like Penny if Doom is going to be as good as we think it is.
Yeah.
With all of that said, the metagame feels very open right now, and I think that's a normal reaction to, a Thursday OTA. It's a while before people figure something out, figure out what's really good. I know a lot of my high elo friends love complaining about move bounce, really anything with Madam Web in it, because that deck scales so high at, be at those situations when you're like a really good player, it just gets better with you. I will say that I played 18 games of Move Bounce. I went 6-12 and lost 24 cubes. So like, I cannot vouch for it being as good as all my friends say. That I have a skill issue on my part. I'm just bad. But
I mean, okay, go.
the major thing I wanted to get across is like, if the best deck in the game that everyone is complaining about is so hard to play that at the time of recording, I'm like 22, ranked 22, something like that. Like, I'm pretty good at the game, and if the deck is supposedly the best deck in the game and it's so hard that I struggle with it at that level, that's probably good. Like, that's probably, like, if you're gonna pick a deck to be the best deck, that's probably a good choice, because it means it's gonna ruin a lot less people that farther down the ladder. It's gonna change the experience a lot less for everyone else. And I feel like I'm very okay with a deck like that being the best deck, just because, I mean, I'd like to see skill rewarded. I think that's probably a good thing, and I'm a pretty skillful player, and I still struggle with it, so yeah, I mean, that seems like a good state of affairs to me, not a bad one.
Yeah, so regarding this whole open meta thing, I also agree that you can really play whatever you want and have decent success with it, right? There's like so many different different variations of like Wiccan decks. There's move bounds. There's like mid-range Galacta shells, which I personally really like. But I do want to speak a bit about move bounds specifically, which is like it's one of those decks throughout time, which is the same formula and recipe of like super high player agency. And if you're not super invested in the game, you don't naturally want to play this deck because it's too difficult. And even if you are good at the game, it's gonna be something that you cannot like chill with, right? You kind of have to like be always on your toes and play it well, because it's not easy to play to begin with. But if you play it well, it's rewarding. Then obviously the question is it rewarding enough to invest so much time in playing the deck also as well? So, but the deck is for sure good. At the highest levels of play, only the highest levels of players complain about it though. That's the thing, because
Yes.
it's so difficult to play, and I think a lot of the more casual players, and not even the more casual players, I guess even the semi casual players don't really need to play such a deck to do well and get to the top ranks. Like, I actually firmly believe that you don't even need to touch anything that has to do with move bounds to get a decent rank in this game. But of course, once you reach that rank, you will start encountering the people that know what's up with the move bounds, and then maybe you will struggle a little bit more.
And you'll have to have Red Guardian in every deck you make.
Yep.
I was really hoping to be done with the topic of Arishem, but I have like a final official statement on the Arishem debacle, which is, I am fairly certain that Arishem is the most popular card they've released in at least the last year. Because of that, I feel like the people calling for this card to be like obliterated off the face of the earth, made into its own game mode, all the stuff that invalidates people purchases of this card, is those people are wrong. I am fairly confident in saying it at this point. I think those people are wrong. It's possible Arishem becomes a problem again. Doom 2099 seems extra strong when you can Arishem him out, for sure. It's entirely possible that this card becomes a problem again, but it needs to be balanced in a meaningful way and not just obliterated. And I specifically wanted to address the fairly constant suggestion I see of making Arishem its own game mode, because I think that is just an absolutely ridiculous suggestion. People bought this card so they could have the experience of playing it against what other people were doing that wasn't Arishem. I don't know if you know this, but mirrors are really bad in almost every card game. Making people who want to have this experience be forced to play mirrors is a very bad idea. And so I just wanted to go out on record and say, I think Arishem is meaningfully worse after the nerf. I think the loss of Agent Coulson is real. I know Lambie was a big fan of, like, I snap Agent Coulson a decent amount of the time. It matters. I think that having to play slightly worse cards does matter. I think that it's possible Doom 2099 drags it a little bit up again, but I think we can conclusively say that this is not only not one of the best decks in the game, but it's probably not a deck people would be playing if it wasn't fun. And I think that the win rate this deck has does not suggest that people are playing it to win. It suggests that it's just good enough that if you're playing it for fun, you're not going to get completely run over all of the time. And I
Yeah,
think that is the right spot for this card to be in.
agree. The current state of Arishem and like after the nerf and everything, it's really just a for fun card and for fun deck that can exist, right? Like you said, it can exist and doesn't get run over because what they've done with this card right now is that I feel personally I wouldn't want to play this without playing like a Thanos in the deck as well because the whole Thanos thing allows you to sort of like shore up the weakness of the deck a little bit and having stuff to do, and also Thanos enables easy Mockingbird, right? Which you really want to enable or easy Mockingbird. It's just one of the best things to do. So I'm fine with the way Arishem is right now for sure. I love this card. I think when Kia mentioned that it's one of the most beloved and like popular cards the game has ever produced, I 100% agree because this card feels like I can just go back and have fun with it when I don't want to like try hard, when I just want to chill. I can go back and chill with some like Arishem and like let the wind take me where it's supposed to take me with these random generations, you know. So yeah, I think we shouldn't do too much more. Actually, not too much more. I think we shouldn't do anything else to Arishem. He's already gotten hit so much, honestly.
It's possible that they need to change him in the future if Doom 2099 ends up really good, right? Like the deck is very indexed for being good at 4-drops that scale now. And
Yes.
so if you have Galacta, Doom 2099, they're all in the deck and that ends up being too powerful, okay, we can go back to 15 cards. Like I'm not going to get mad at that. But I think at this point, the card has 2 levers on it. One is the turn the ramp starts, the other is how many cards it's adding. And we can solve any problem it creates with those 2 levers, I suspect. And I
Agree.
don't think we need to do anything more major to this card. I think this card is like maybe a 50% win rate deck right now. Obviously, subject to change, Doom 2099, but the impact of any one card in Arishem is fairly minimal given the nature of the card. It's like a 50% deck that a lot of people enjoy, and I really don't want to send it the way of destroy, if that makes sense. I really want to keep it around 50% if I can, because when things start slipping below that threshold, you start making people's investments worse, and I don't want that.
Yeah, Destroy got totally destroyed, man.
Lambie, we've named this section Wiccannot because there is a thing that Wiccan can do, but really doesn't want to do. What is that thing?
Yeah, so we can play this deck in many different ways, but we cannot play certain deck cards in Wiccan. It just doesn't work. I think maybe I'll just talk a bit more on this topic before handing it back
Go
to you,
nuts, my
right?
man.
Because the thing about Wiccan is it's spoken for. It's like predetermined, right? You want a 1-on-1, a 2-on-2, a 3-on-3, and then Wiccan, and then you get your extra energy to play sixes plus stuff, and then you just go from there. So that is the strength of being a Wiccan deck, right? It's a points deck that just has more energy than your opponent, so you can play more stuff on the last 2 turns of the game. So the way you build a Wiccan deck is that you cannot brick. Like you are just not supposed to brick when you play a Wiccan deck, because the way the deck is you need to have perfect energy expenditure and then play Wiccan on 4. So what this means is when we mention about tech cards is that you cannot have too many cards or even a single card in your deck that says I only can be useful in X situation. You know, like you can't really have like a Shang-Chi in this deck. You to a certain extent you don't even really want a Shadow King in this deck as well, because the thing is you don't want cards that are only playable at certain times, because every single turn leading up to the Wiccan turn you just want to fill the curve, you know. So you want to fill the curve with useful stuff, and you don't want to have situational cards in the deck, which is why tech cards in this deck are very difficult to fit, because if a tech card is something that you don't want to slam on curve, you kind of have to, because you need to fulfill the Wiccan condition to slam stuff on curve. So I guess when it comes to tech cards, the only one that I'm really loving in Wiccan is Red Guardian, because Red Guardian is a tech card that is literally, I play it whether it's good or not, it's a 3/5. You know, if it does more than being a 3/5, fantastic. If it doesn't, I'm playing it on 3 so I can play Wiccan on 4. You know, so I think that's one of those cards that makes sense in a Wiccan deck. But in general, we cannot play too many random tech cards in a Wiccan deck because it destroys the purpose of the deck.
Which puts the deck in a weird situation where it's actually
Yes.
just like a points deck, and it doesn't
Yeah.
actually have the ability to like drag anything down to its level. Like the typical mid-range deck is, I'm gonna play 10 really good cards Shadow King Shang-Chi, right? I'm gonna play 10 really good cards Rogue Killmonger. I'm gonna play 10 really good cards and then 2 really meta-relevant, impactful cards, right? And Wiccan is sort of warping that to be like, look, I'm actually just discard. I'm actually just doing
Yeah.
points. Like I'm actually just straight up out
Wiccan is
here.
Proxima Midnight, man. It's 4/7. Okay, but
Yeah.
not really.
Like I'm actually just out here playing points. Like I'm not interacting with you really. I have Red Guardian because he's a tech card that allows me to do that, and that is like a meaningful upgrade over discard, to be clear. But like that is like even discard has interaction now. They're like playing, Moon Knight Gambit. They're interacting with you too. And so
Yes.
the gap between like Wiccan and discard is actually mostly about average point output rather than like different metagame positioning. And I think it's weird. I think like that's part of the reason why I tend to prefer like the smaller ball Peni Parker Galacta midrange decks, because those decks can just play tech and it's not actively bad for them. You're not like, oh my god, I can't believe I drew this Shang-Chi, or I can't believe I have to curve out this Shadow King on 2. You're just like, get to play tech and it's not terrible. And I think that stuff like that is like, oh, that's what a mid-range deck is. That's what it feels like. I've been playing a lot of anti-venom decks recently because they want to be Shadow King decks. And I think Shadow King decks are really well positioned right now. That's a good thing to be. And that'll almost certainly change given Doom 2099, but the same anti-venom logic there is anti-venom decks want to be decks that can play, US Agent, right? Like there's gonna be room for stuff like that. And I think the inflexibility of Wiccan makes me much more worried about it continuing as a shell in a world where Doom 2099 exists compared to something like Anti-Venom, which can be more flexible. I wanted to talk a little bit about the Beta Ray build change, which, when I look at it, I think is objectively a good buff. I think maybe 6 months ago, this card gets 1 power extra, and instead it got 2 on the Stormbreaker. I think the thing that strikes me about this, and many other changes that happened in this patch, is it's not enough to make the card a generic good card, and it's not enough to make the card's archetype meaningfully better. And so when you're buffing a card like a Beta Ray Bill or a Shuri, these are archetype-specific cards. And the only world where they're not going to be archetype-specific cards is where they end up being so strong as a package that they go in the dominant mid-rangey decks, that you just play them alongside some good tech and some other good cards, and it's just as good as it's possibly going to be for you, and they're just amazing. And I don't think Beta Ray Bill's buff takes it and the Thor package to that level. I don't think that Shuri's buff takes it in the Thor package to that level. And it makes me wonder what it is that the goal is for these buffs, because I feel like these archetypes still need more help. But I also don't want to make it so that Beta Ray Bill is now the new mid-range deck du jour. So what's the plan? Is it like buff Thor, buff Jane, buff King Atri to draw 2? What is the solution to a situation like this where it's like a very archetype-specific thing where the archetype clearly needs help, but it's hard to figure out how to give it that help?
I actually think you said it. I didn't think about it until you had your statement, because before this video I was just thinking like, yeah, this card is probably not gonna see play. Beta Ray Bill is still probably not gonna see play outside its very specific shell. Like Beta Ray Bill, it's like you won't think of just playing Beta Ray Bill in random mid range shells.
Yeah,
right?
you'll
That's what
never
I'm trying to
do
say.
it.
Yeah, but what you just mentioned actually, I think could be the thing where King A3 draw 2. I think King A3 draw 2. Like you just amp up the consistency of your final turn power level by so much by having King A3 draw 2. But scary thing to think about, because I think that might go a bit wrong if it's not managed properly as well.
Crazy
but
Thanos card.
It's just another Mind Stone, right?
Yeah.
But like I do think it has to be King A3 draw 2, that kind of level, to push like Beta Ray Bill into like a more playable spotlight. But I guess honestly my personal opinion is like when I looked at this buff, it just feels like they wanna just like bump up the power of this card so that people that like the card can play the card and win a bit more games. I don't think it's meant to do anything and change the meta game the more I look at it.
Right, but I feel like that doesn't land well with most players. Like when they see a card they like getting attention, they want it to be really good. Not just like a little bit better for fans, they want to be able to play it without feeling embarrassed at the top level. And I'm not sure that Beta Ray Bill is that, even with this. I think he's better, but he's still kind of the same weaknesses of like, if you didn't throw priority, he gets Shang-Chi and Shadow King. If you did throw priority, well, what if they Magneto your Thor and your Beta Ray Bill to the same lane? Or what if you get Eliath? Or, like, there's just like, his fundamental play pattern makes him not particularly suitable to that. But I do think that it was a nice buff, and I'm a Thor Hammers deck fan. I just think that, like, ultimately, if it weren't shuffling into the deck, you would actually see this card get played. Like,
Dude, that's too strong, man. If you're adding the hammer to the hand
I know
for a
you can't
guaranteed
just
double,
add it to
no
the
shot.
hand.
That's messed up. That's too strong.
What if
That's
it's
too
like,
strong.
I don't know, it's a 50% chance to get added to the hand, and then, Jane lets you get double another 50% chance to add it to the hand. I don't know. Everyone would hate that. The same way they hate Bruce Banner. They hate
Yes.
numbers that say percentage on cards. But still, I don't know, just like I feel like the issue is it makes your deck you're drawing less of your cards unless you're specifically filtering that stuff out with Atri and Jane, and that is never worth it unless you're filtering it out exactly. So if you're not playing Atri and you're not playing Jane, these cards are negative value propositions. If you don't draw Atri and you don't draw Jane, these cards are negative value propositions. And that, I think, is the ultimate thing that bothers me about them.
Yeah, that's such a good point, by the way. Like the feels bad and the problem of drawing the hammer for your draw, right? Like actually drawing the hammer for your draw.
Yep.
I think puts this deck really on the low for now for me.
You wanted to talk a little bit about Galacta. I have been led to believe that you are a fan.
I've been led to believe that I'm a new fan for sure. Like when I saw the card, I mean my argument wasn't even really good. It was just that I thought the daughter of Galactus would do like more powerful things, but turns out she's like the mid range queen right now, right? Like she's so strong. Like we started doing surfer things, which obviously was strong. Then now you can do it's very Thena-esque, right? Like the Kitty Pride plus Galacta thing. Like you get a thing in your hand that costs 1 that can be huge on the final turn, like 1/7, 1/10 sometimes, that kind of thing. So I really think Galacta is just like the queen of the mid range. Like I even thought that she was gonna be support for the name escapes me. Gwenpool. I thought she was gonna be the support for Gwenpool, but I think she's actually just the better
Yeah, it's
version
the
of
other way
Gwenpool.
around.
Yeah, it's the other way around. It's kind of crazy, right? Like, this topic is really just more of a Galacta is such a good card in so many. It's like the epitome of splashable, right? You could run her in some like I probably not so much wombo combo, but you could run her in the surfer stuff. You could run her in just random mid-range shells. Like she goes everywhere. As a battle pass card, she fits the bill of good but not broken. She's for sure not busted. But like she's just a it's worth spending on her for the battle pass just to get the card because I think the card is just good.
It's a shame that there are so many people who are have chosen this month to send a message to their wallets or send a message to Second Dinner with their wallets to be like, I'm not going to buy the Battle Pass card because you picked a bad month for that. Like, I understand it's a principled stance and you don't want to pick a good month. Like, obviously it means less if you do it in a month when it's like Dakin or whatever, right? Like, so, but I am saying, that this is a real sacrifice you're making here. Damn. Wanted to use the last section here to do a deeply online thing and just complain about some Twitter posts.
Yep.
I've been seeing a lot of like Pokemon Pocket people being like, I can't believe all these Marvel Snap gamers are telling me that Pokemon Pocket is less strategically deep than Marvel Snap. And it's just like, I don't think I've ever seen people like seriously knocking Pokemon Pocket for that. If anything, I think that Pokemon Pocket has been widely adopted by vast amounts of the Marvel Snap community in a way that is generally good for it. And the majority opinion in the Marvel Snap community is, wow, this monetization is way better. Even if the game maybe isn't as deep strategically, there's still plenty of the love about it, right? I've seen Ben Brode playing Pokemon Pocket. I've seen me playing Pokemon Pocket. I've seen Dexter playing Pokemon Pocket. Like, there is widespread adoption here, and I guess what I don't understand is why I still see Pokemon Pocket people posting like everyone in Marvel Snap is hating on them. That's the opposite of true, dude. Like, there's no animosity there, and in fact, a lot of creators are playing a lot of Pokemon Pocket.
Yeah, this topic might be the most like no one. We are not even really asking for any answers or whatever.
No.
But I believe this topic will probably be the bulk of your comments.
It better
I'm very
not
sure.
be. I swear to
But
God.
it's probably going to be. But anyway, so yeah, even I am opening packs in Pokemon Pocket. Like I specifically say opening packs because I'm with you guys, Marvel Snap people. I prefer the Marvel Snap gameplay for now.
Sure.
But like I think that like both games have their own like draws and they have their own like benefits and like love, right? So like I don't think honestly no one is really hating. Like it's just it's so weird because like I think people just assume that like if you change or you go play the other game, it means that this game is like hated on. Like no way, man. Like just playing a different game. Like come on.
I feel like ultimately Marvel Snap has better gameplay. I don't really
I
think
agree.
that's like super controversial.
Yeah.
I think that Pokemon Pocket has pretty great gameplay though. Like a lot of people dunk on it. They're like, "Oh, it's all RNG," and it's like I don't really think that's true. Like RNG matters, but your job is to mitigate it or to play to it, right? And that's every card game. If there's one actual issue with Pokemon Pocket, it's that the RNG is super visible, which lets bad players
Yes.
see it more. And the more bad players see RNG, the more they get something that's easy to complain about. And I think it's sort of the designer's job to hide that RNG as much as they can, which is why when you look at Marvel Snap, right, like the RNG is pretty hidden. Locations really impact stuff, but it's like relatively hidden. Even something like Arishem, right? Like put that RNG in your face when you got blown out by Claw or whatever. But that is like a big driver of complaints. The more visible the RNG is, the more people are going to be able to process it, understand what it is, and complain about it. The less visible the RNG is, the more clearly you have to be looking at the game to see it. And I do think if Pokemon Pocket made one mistake, it is very visible RNG. Stuff like Misty is
Hmm.
just like extremely visible. Like it doesn't feel good when things like that happen. But I do think that on the whole, I very much enjoy playing the game, and
Yeah.
I don't understand why people are putting these two games in opposition. If anything, Marvel
Yeah.
Snap should look at Pokemon Pocket and say, "Damn, that economy works really well. Maybe we can learn from it."
Yeah, I just want to add one more thing that the one thing that I'm like a bit sad about, and I just wish, like it could have happened was that did you know that like the Pokemon Pocket tournaments on the weekends have so many people?
They have
It's
so
like
many. Yeah.
so many, man. And Marvel Snap never reached that level, like never
Yeah, they
reached
like
that
Ursa
level.
Day's tournaments have like 1,000+ people every
Right?
week. And that's really
Yeah,
impressive.
exactly. Impressive, man.
All right, y'all. Thank you so much for making it through that episode. I said I was going to stop saying that. I'm bad at it. Thank you so much for watching that episode. Lambie, you're back, so please take us out.
Thank you so much for being here with us, everyone. Like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.